Greetings, listeners. Chris Frederick from the Stretchman Institute. Excited to be here with a colleague of mine, Dr. Derek Steveson. Is that how you say it?
Steveson.
Steveson.
Yeah, that's
I got
correct.
it right. And Derek, if I may call you Derek,
Absolutely.
uh, is teaching the functional biomechanics for the foot and lower extremity with consideration for orthotic intervention. And you're going to be teaching that at my Stretchman Institute. Very excited. That's on Friday, March 9th, in 3 weeks from today, from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. So that's a very convenient time for a lot of people to kind of reschedule some clients, patients, so they can get in. And I think they're going to get just a condensed version of a lot of things, condensed into 4 hours, which will be little lecture, a lot of hands-on, I guess.
Yep.
But I'll let you tell the rest, Derek. But before you even describe the course, who is Derek Steveson?
Well, I'm a pretty simple guy, just like you. I think we both bonded because we realized we have the privilege of treating patients, and when somebody entrusts their well-being to you, it's just a great privilege. And so, first and foremost, I'm a physical therapist and been practicing in Tempe for 22 years. At the Functional Performance Center, and have basically been blessed with the wonderful opportunity to treat patients from every walk of life, whether it's a professional athlete or a housewife or a laborer or on the medical floor. So got my doctorate at Creighton University in 1996. Have been practicing obviously ever since then. And was also fortunate enough to meet Gary Gray, who's a world-renowned physical therapist at a pretty early part in my career. He's really helped to change the way I think about how the human body works and given a real basic construct and foundation of functional biomechanics and what happens when we function. And so I've been a colleague of Gary's for all these years and I enjoy teaching and lecturing. We have probably had over 100 physical therapy doctoral students as clinical interns and probably another 100 personal trainers and volunteers. And so we're constantly sharing our ideas and thoughts of applied functional science and how it applies to the human body and the principles, strategies, and techniques that we utilize to help give us direction
Mm-hmm.
in clinical decision making. And there's just a million ways to treat patients. We all know that there's massage therapists, personal trainers, stretch therapists, acupuncturists, chiropractors, osteopaths, PTs. Everybody has a little bit different model, so to speak, what they practice with, but I think it's all right and it's all good if your intention is always to help the patient. What I hope and pray for today and for the upcoming seminar that we're going to do is that we can just add some insight into critical decision making with respect to understanding how the body really works functionally. Even if you are doing manual skills on a table, not knowing necessarily what the outcome is going to be when they come off, with the exception of your empirical data that you've accumulated over years of doing it. What I hope to do is add a few functional tests that anybody can use, whether you're a massage therapist, which most of your work is obviously done on a table, the stretch therapy stuff that you guys have brought to the forefront of our industry, how to then put the puzzle together with the patient when gravity's pushing them down into the ground and they're having to function in gravity, upright, and how you can test and retest after you do an intervention of some kind, and to just give a little bit of information on that aspect of taking care of patients, whether you're a massage therapist who maybe doesn't have necessarily a whole lot of didactic school level training on exercise prescription, you still have the trust and the well-being of the patient that you are treating in your hands. And so I think it's just a no-brainer to give those folks some information on what they can do after they've done their treatments to give some some full thought to understanding what kind of exercises people can do as well. And then, of course, the orthotic intervention is it's just a tweak. Orthotics are an extrinsic variable that we utilize as clinicians to help improve the environment that a patient functions in. And so when do you use an over-the-counter device? When does somebody need to get referred out to have a more disciplined and intricate evaluation with respect to the finite arthrokinematics or foot types that need some extra attention? When people have problems on one side versus both sides, trying to make some sense of the overall patient presentation that they have. And so I'm hopeful that with some of the information that I can share with folks on March 9th, it will give any practitioner that a few more tools in their belt to make some critical decisions to benefit their patient.
That's exactly, I believe, what my students, my graduates who come from all those backgrounds, massage and training and other therapies, they're looking for something. I think it's one of the missing links, possibly one of the weaker links in all of those professions in their backgrounds, is really understanding the foot. Again, at the basic level, we're not going to go into the most detailed. That would be many,
A higher level course, yeah.
yeah, many more hours of instruction. I think this is the perfect level for a lot of people just to begin to understand the patterns, the common patterns,
Sure.
prevalent patterns that are out there, and how to screen as such. And I'm wondering, and I'm thinking out loud, I think a lot of people are, let's say, this is one case scenario where they've done what they think they can do so far within their scope of practice, within their abilities. They achieve a certain goals with the client slash patient, and they hit a dead end, a brick wall, a plateau. Let's say
Sure.
the person could be 50% functionally improved, yet they have residual issues left over. I see people, is that when maybe they can start thinking, maybe I should do what I just learned from Dr. Steveson about screening, orthotic screening, or is it the other way around? Should they do it first?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I think ultimately, as a PT, you and I would agree that most people are imbalanced. And I don't like to use the word weakness because weakness has a negative connotation to it, but they're weak. and ultimately, having a template to take one of your clients and patients through, whether it's a massage patient or a personal training client or a stretch client, after they've done the work that you've done to them, the manual work, the thought out and prescribed procedural work that you've done, how do you put the puzzle together when they get off your table? And ultimately, if we can empower and educate folks that have that privilege of treating those patients and those clients, if we can empower trainers and therapists of all kinds to be able to look at a simple single leg squat test, to watch people move in 3 planes of motion and do simple movements of lunging and reaching, and then and have some template to base the analysis of that motion off of.
Right.
Because life really is motion. I mean, I don't know how many patients that you've had, but I've had very few that don't have any motion. Even quadriplegics have some motion.
Right.
And so getting a base of understanding of what their functionality is and where their success lies. I've had several patients with knee pain, for instance, that, of course, we can do all kinds of modalities, whether it's laser or acupuncture or A-stim treatments or Graston treatments or ultrasound treatments or stretch therapy to bias and enhance the tissue healing effect at their knees where their pain presents. Those same folks also may have been to multiple practitioners and had multiple different things done, but maybe nobody's ever watched them walk. And maybe nobody's ever looked at their foot. I know as a physical therapist now, as I look back at the path that I went through as a college basketball player, I had some of the world's best orthopedic surgeons, physical therapists, athletic trainers work on my knees. No one looked at my foot. No one looked at my hip. And as soon as I got the right orthotic, and as soon as I learned Gary Gray's applied functional science principles and strategies, and realized that the biggest muscles in your body are located around your hip, your gluteus maximus, the hamstrings, the adductors, the quads, they all pass that joint, and understanding how to enhance their firing capacity. Right. And so ultimately maximizing those big, strong muscles in my body and getting the right platform or extrinsic variable of putting the right kind of orthotic underneath my foot, because I have a very high arched foot. I have a 4-foot valgus, I have a 4-foot equinus. Those are all fancy names for my foot's not normal and it doesn't function normal. But once I put my foot in a more optimal environment and then prescribed exercises that enhance the way my whole biomechanical chain works, it's not rocket science. It really isn't. Now, not to downplay what Gary's brought to the world or the complexity behind the science of applied functional science, it is a mindset that you have to kind of shift to understand it. But I really think we can show personal trainers, athletic trainers, PTs, obviously, chiros, stretch therapists, people that go through your training and have such a high level of understanding of tissue threshold limits and when to do certain things and what to look for when you see somebody that can't do something on the table and on one side and they can on the other, and what to do to help with that. Sure. And then to put some glue behind it and say, okay, here we go. As soon as you stand up, the whole game changes, because gravity and ground reaction forces and our body's momentum are the main forces that act on our muscles and on our tissue. And now we have to re-educate our neuromuscular system. We have to put people in a safe environment first and foremost. Right. Second of all, we want them to succeed. As a PT, I know that the most frustration I see with a patient is when I have them doing stuff they can't do. They're not going to do that as a home program if they can't do it under your direct supervision. So you need to put people in safe and successful environments, but then you also don't want to put a professional basketball player or a professional football player in an environment that's so safe and they're so successful at without challenging them. Right. So you've got to find that button to push and say, okay, I have the starting linebacker for the Phoenix Cardinals or the Arizona Cardinals, and they don't really move well through their hips in the frontal plane. So I'm going to create an exercise environment that really optimizes the fact that they're not having their knee pain while we do this exercise. They're succeeding at it, but they're getting something from it. There's a therapeutic index with medications that physicians prescribe. That index is that big for some drugs. It's this big for others, like Coumadin, a blood thinner. A doctor prescribes too much or too little. You're either getting no effect or you're getting death. So you want to, as a PT or as a trainer or as anybody that has the privilege of treating patients, put people in environments that you're getting a therapeutic effect from the prescription of the exercise that you're showing them. And it doesn't need to be 20 different things. Right. I don't think that everybody needs 20 exercises. Sometimes one, sometimes 2 or 3. Maybe some people would benefit from 7 to 10 different things, but I think you got to keep in mind the complexity of our motion, the multi-directionness of our motion, and the consciousness of our motion. I've never met one pro athlete who says that they engage their transverse abdominis right before the quarterback snaps the ball. They are thinking about the 3 wide receivers that they have to determine which one of those 3 guys they have to cover or whatever. And so our consciousness should be, as therapists and as clinicians, on, I think, prescribing safe, successful, challenging, functional environments for our patients and putting that puzzle together for people with very simple exercises. I can't begin to tell you how many people I just give a single leg squat to, but I modify it. I put them in front of their sink I know that they're an elderly person that has a lack of balance. I actually use their opposite leg as a support system with their toe tapped. That's where the individual prescription comes in, and that's what I hope to accomplish during the course on March 9th, is to give clinicians, even though they aren't trained like you and I are with terminal degrees in exercise prescription and as PTs, you can really, really give people, I think, a lot of the meat and potatoes of how to start people on doing exercises. I have no problems as a PT of a massage therapist prescribing exercises if they understand function.
Exactly.
And they have common sense and they care about the patient and they understand that the totality of human motion is really driven by gravity and ground reaction forces. Now, I have just as much of a challenge with PTs or massage therapists or personal trainers living in that zone of prescribing really thought out, maybe even research-based prescribed exercises, but they're so far away from what the patient does that they've created this gaposis, this artificial false positive success for the patient.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean, like a straight leg raise for a professional soccer player.
Right.
Is it a bad exercise? No. Is it a wrong exercise? No. Where is a straight leg raise on the functional spectrum for a professional soccer player? Well, we know it's way, way over here to the left next to you sleeping in your bed. And if you want to prepare that person, and if that person is your brother or your sister or your child, don't you want to reduce that gap? Don't you want to get them successful in a contained environment? Call it rehab, call it therapy, call it conditioning, whatever you want. Don't you want to push them right to their limit of their tissue thresholds so that when they do go back and start participating in their sport or their job for that matter, there's not a lot of gaposis. And gaposis is dangerous. Gaposis is dangerous for physicians. Right. It's dangerous for chiropractors. It's dangerous for people in your stretch school. If you stretch, or you manipulate, and then you say, okay, go play your sport. Yeah. I just think you're putting people in a situation where they have a lot of gaposis. Well, so I hope that the course can bring some, and now, again, that takes absolutely nothing away from the magnificent amount of thought and efficacy and usefulness and therapeutic value of massage or acupuncture or stretch therapy or standard modality driven therapy or manual therapy. I have some friends that are brilliant manual therapists in physical therapy. I just hope that we can bring some light to the occasion and give people some of that. Hey, I now know that when I get my patient off the table and I've done X, Y, and Z to them, I can now watch them move. And I have a little bit of a template, a little bit of a movement screen that I know I can take people through to say, okay, that patient with knee pain doesn't like an anterior lunge. Right. It hurts their knees. But they can do a lateral lunge and they can do a same side rotational lunge with reaches with their upper body because it turns on other muscle groups. And now all of a sudden their knee doesn't hurt. So I now know that I can prescribe or make recommendations for patients to say, hey, I know that an anterior lunge doesn't work for you because your back hurts and your knees hurt. But look at this. You can do a same side rotational lunge to the back rotational vector with your right leg, take both arms and rotate them to the right. It turns your butt on sooner in the load cycle. And that turning those big proximal muscles on sooner in that load cycle, your knee looks up and goes, thank you, Mr. Butt, for finally doing something when you should do it. It takes pressure off my patellar tendon, and I can now start having a therapeutic situation from a neuromuscular development standpoint. So now you're building success in a safe environment for a patient, and you're allowing them to understand that they can move. And I really think we can do that in a four-hour course, introductory level course. I think we can do that, and I'm excited about it. I really feel that it's going to have an impact on a lot of people's lives, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I can't really add to that. I think for myself, I'm very excited. You're going to put decades of experience and professionalism and the ethics of responsibility in handing this knowledge over. And I know it's going to be a great course. So
Yeah, it will be.
they got,
And we have a number of people already signed up.
yep, number.
We're going to make it fun. It's not going to be me sit and talk about facts 4 hour session. I think I've been to enough of those, and you have too. And those are good sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really need those. And certainly, different phases of your development as a clinician, you certainly have to go through a lot of book learning that may not be as interactive. But what I hope we can accomplish with the course is a lot of question answer, a lot of problem solving, and then give people just some basic construct of understanding motion and how to attack it. Because everybody walks into your clinic, not everybody, but most everybody walks into your clinic. So that means that we can start with gait. We can look at some gait movements. We can look at some multi-directional lunge movements. We can look at some balance reaching movements. We can look at driving our lower body in one plane of motion, and then driving our upper body and torso in an opposite range of motion, and looking at how each person responds.
Yeah.
And some people are going to do an anterior lunge and reach both arms to the left,
yep.
And you're going to see their knee varus thrust, and other people are going to be able to maintain it. And we're going to talk about and teach the participants in this class why you would then start with a certain kind of exercise if somebody does a lunge and their knee drives out, or if they do the lunge and their knee stays in, which is more optimal because it makes the butt turn on quicker, and then how to build from those kind of things. And it's all basic stuff. It's not high level physics. It's based in physics. It's based in the high level of physics, but it's not. You don't need to understand Newton's third law. You don't need to understand Wolff's law on bone formation. I mean, but having those things of science behind how we teach, how people move, and how the beautiful foot, which I have a foot fetish, I admit, it can make or break how people function. And putting a simple over-the-counter device in, putting somebody in the appropriate shoe, how to look at the foot in a basic and cursory way without having to go to PT school or medical school, to understand that the foot it needs to be flexible sometimes, it needs to be rigid sometimes, how to look at arch height, how to look at calluses, to give you information as to the forces that pass through the foot that then have significant ramifications on how the biomechanical kinetic chain functions. All those things. We want to touch on a lot of that, but I think the biggest thing is we want it to be interactive. We want it to be, we want every single person that comes to leave fulfilled, encouraged, and challenged.
Awesome.
And if they can leave fulfilled, encouraged, and challenged, as a teacher, you're onto something. And so that's what I hope happens.
So excited. Thanks again, Derek, for summarizing what's going to be a fantastic course. Again, functional biomechanics for the foot and lower extremity with considerations for orthotic intervention, March 9th. That's in 3 weeks from today. We have some spots left. It's a 4-hour course from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on that Friday afternoon at the Stretch to Win Institute. Go to stretchtowin.com, workshops, look up the special courses, and you will find Derek's course is the first one listed. So with that, we will draw this interview to an end. Thanks again for your time. We look forward to seeing you live.
Cheers.
And till we meet again, ta-ta all. And Derek, just stay on the line.